All right, here we are in the third week of Section 2. Section 2, Week 1, we're wrapping up the platformer with the enemy controller, token controller, and then the tile map system. Then we moved into explain first-person shooter. Here's some resources on the tile map. And then when we moved into the first-person shooter second week, we looked at all the screen space UI stuff because those are all the Unity scenes besides the main one. And we looked at the screen space UI in the main scene and the world space, the hoverbot. And then we spent a class on the render pipeline, which would be like materials, shaders, the lighting system, geometry. And we looked at the sky map and the VFX systems, and we'll probably spend some more time on the VFX systems. But it was last class in there's an in-game menu, right? Take screenshot. So let me open up this quickly because this connects to last class, or one of the two last classes. And I was saying that there was like this special little macro that was something a little bit new. And it's like, hey, let's take a screenshot. Okay, here's all the properties and fields. And then on awake, if we're not in the Unity editor, then we don't even get the screenshot panel, and this feature is disabled. Else, let's go for it. Let's offer up a screenshot functionality. And so that means it's only available in Unity editor. So we have this interesting if, else, and end if. And I found documentation on it. The link is right here. So conditional compilation. So Unity is taking advantage of C# preprocessor directives. So these are like little commands or lines that don't get compiled along with your C# code back into Unity as a component object. So we saw like you can give those commands, like I went over here, like tooltips, like when you have these kind of square brackets, like I went over tooltips and serialized field, and these are kind of like that. They're like macros. They're not being compiled. They're like messages. They're like commands. In this case, they're going to like the Unity plugin that's between Visual Studio and Unity. Now this one is kind of similar, but they're called these preprocessor directives. And basically you can do like statements, like here you were doing an if statement, but it's an if statement that's not part of your C# code that's going back to Unity. So it's like saying, hey compiler, or hey Unity plugin, go check if we're whatever Unity is being run in this code at the moment that it's being run. If it's being run, in this case for standalone Windows, like if we did an exe, if we did a file build settings, if we actually built this thing, here's our scenes, we're going to build for Windows, build, and we ran the exe file. So all this code that would be like run, it would be run from the exe, not from the Unity editor. It would be run from an actual build file. And it would check. It would say, the compiler that's running that code would say, hey, are we in the Unity editor? And there's some code that Unity custom written can check. And there's other checks you could do. So it's like, hey, are we currently an exe running on Windows? Or are we something else? Right, so if we're in exe and we're not in the editor, or we're not on Mac, we can print out this debug statement. Otherwise, this line of code will not be run. So it's like this line of code will get run within Unity, will get run within that Unity build, but only if this is true, and this is like a directive that's before the processor, that's not being coming along. It's not being compiled and be brought as our standard C# code for our game. So it's interesting to look at. And there are situations where like you want certain code to run based on different situations. And in our situation, it says only if we're actually in the Unity editor can we take screenshots, because this feature doesn't make sense anywhere else. And you can check a whole bunch of stuff. Are we in the editor? Are we in some type of standalone build? Are we on the server? Are we on an iPhone? And so on. Which version of Unity is running? You might do different things based on which version of Unity is running. And so on. And so anyway, these are called conditional compilation. It's something we stumbled upon. All right. So let's kind of just look back at these VFX systems because I kind of ran through them a little quickly, and there's a lot of parts to them. So I was just going to explain all the parts. In fact, this thing might be rather complicated. Maybe I'm just going to go ahead and create one. So I'm going to create, it looks like they have a few more now, but I'm going to create a particle system. And if we create it from scratch, it should be a little bit simpler, where if we like mess around with it, we can see it do. Okay. So it's kind of like down beneath the floor. So let me move it up a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, maybe this health pickup, maybe since it just happens to be here, you know, maybe you can say like, oh, this is meant to be part of this health pickup prefab and this particle system. So there's a big plus sign. It's a 3D model, and there's probably like a collider around it so that we know like if the player picks it up, okay, you know, like turn off the prefab, add some health to the health script or whatever. But so you have to like ignore the that like orange square means like we have it selected. Of course we have it selected. We're like running it, so we have it selected. So you have to like look at the like white glowy spots within it, not the orange stuff. I never tried out this editor. It's basically you have all the same kind of like settings, but maybe you can like simulate it in this view, but I'm not getting anything. So normally I work with the particle systems out here in the level. And so anyway, you have your transform for positioning, rotating, whatever. Then you have this big particle system component. Then you have a material. And so this is just the default setup. And I'm just going to click off it real quick. This is what the particles look like, the default ones. I just clicked off it so that we don't have to see the orange outline. I'm just going to quickly see if no, let's see if there's a way just to turn the no. Oh well. So what's happening here is we have our own little timeline. We have like a main game timeline where time is always moving forward at a standard rate. And we have timelines like when we use animations and animators, like when they're running, you know, and you're testing them out, they kind of like are using their own timeline because you're like previewing them. This is kind of similar. We just have a little timeline running to preview what the particles look like because they have to be run. It's a physics simulation and they have to run over time. It's a dynamic simulation. So here we see a regular playback speed, the amount of time that's happening since the beginning, how many particles are like currently on the screen. So notice it's a flat 50. So what normally happens is particles are in one moment at time, one little frame, right? Particles are spawning from the source, and all existing particles are simulated based on their acceleration and what forces are being applied to them. And they have a lifespan. So you notice that eventually they end. And this is like based on their speed and their lifespan, they're dying or stopping around here. And so it looks like at any given time, you kind of have about 50 particles on screen. And if you remember, the basic particle I was saying is actually a 2D sprite. So that's why there's little squares around them. Is that it's a cheap way to make it look 3D. No matter how I look at this thing, I'm seeing the particle. And the particle is this circle shape that gets soft, that gets gradient fall off. And no matter how you look at it, the circle is oriented toward you. So it gives the illusion that it's a sphere. So to generate this many like 3D objects, think of them as game objects, like each one has like a sphere model, that's very expensive. So we usually hack it with what's called a billboard. We have 2D graphics that are always looking at the camera, oriented toward the camera, no matter how you rotate it around it. And so that's why they have this kind of orange square outline, and then the little graphic is in the middle. And so let's look at, if I move this down a little bit. So here we have the length of time that the particle system's emitting particles. This indicates the length of one cycle. So 5 seconds for the loop of one cycle. And it's looping. So you can turn this off and say, okay, that just means it's going to run for 5 seconds. Notice the particles are ramping up. And then boom, it's done. Our duration of our life is ended. So we could turn that on. Sometimes you want to pre-warm it. Sometimes you don't want to see the starting volume of stuff coming up. You want it to see it in its regular, like this is its regular point right here. Where it's like everything is fully coming up. And so you can turn on like pre-warm. Like I don't want to see that starting movement. So start lifetime. This is the lifetime of the particles. So they die after 5 seconds. So if you ramp it up, they last longer. They can get higher up. Just in this case, we're going up. You don't have to. But if they last longer, so they cover more distance. So you can make the lifetime more. Notice more particles have to stay alive. You sometimes do have to be careful of how much processing is taking up. So right now we have 150 particles on screen at any point, any time. And if we have less lifetime, we get, less particles. So you can check your frame rate as the particle systems are running and see how much it's impacting your frame rate. Your start speed. So if I zoom out, remember I said speed times your duration that you're moving. So if I increase the speed, they get farther out as well. Yeah, but we have less particles, so we still have the same 50. They just get out farther. But notice there's like more space. It gets more sparser out here. So there's that trade-off between how quickly they're going or their lifetime. And you'll get different effects. Or different feel. It really depends what you're trying to do. You're trying to simulate steam or rain. Or sparks from a laser beam hitting a wall or whatever it is that you're trying to do. So these aren't 3D. I'm going to skip this. So start size. So how big is this particle when it starts? So there's a default size of 1. Notice I make it really big. They kind of blend together. This to me is starting to look like a smoke. So just increasing the size of it. It looks like a smoke. And start rotation. So since these are circles, you don't really notice the rotation that much. But if you really ramp it, you can see like they are turning. It's like they're not rotating over time. It's just what's their like starting rotation. So that might not be as interesting. Maybe it is. Start color. So notice it's the center point of it, like it fades off to a dark. This material. There's like a ton of materials, but this one's like a red, like a dark or we can make it kind of like an orange. So this might be getting of like a smoke and a fire situation. So that's cool. Start color. Gravity source. We're in a 3D world. We're using 3D physics. So if you wanted gravity to hit it, you can turn it into almost like more of like a fountain. Like they have a weight. Like the particles have a weight. They have a momentum going up, and then they start going down. So they're definitely not like gas there. So let's put that back to 0. They have a weight, but interesting. Yeah, you can leave this alone. This is like we're just doing a regular simulation, speed and space. Play on awake, like as soon as this game object turns on or something, you can start emitting. Our physics mode is rigid body. That's fine. We have to max out the particles. We don't want to kill our system. Cool. So all these were like the beginning. This is like starts us off. This starts off the simulation. Now we have some other things, depending if they're turned on or off. So emission is turned on. So how much are we emitting over time? 10 particles a second. So we can ramp it up. And now we're emitting a lot more. Notice there's a lot more particles on the screen. So now we're emitting 40 particles a second. Emitted over a distance. I think the way that this, I'm currently have it set up, this isn't like being impacted. You can burst them. So it could be like, so at this time we're going to shoot this many, and at this time we're going to shoot like this many more. So you can kind of like have intervals and bursts and cycles. I didn't get it looking that different, but you can have like emission bursts. This is the shape of the source. The source happens to be at the base, the center of the where this game object is. Right now it's emitting from a cone, and that's why when you zoom out it kind of has like a cone shape as it comes up. But it doesn't need to be. There's many different, like you can emit from a donut shape. Here, this is making them go all out in like all directions. In a sphere, same thing. Half a sphere, hemisphere, and so on. I'm gonna go back. The cone is normally the starting point. In this case, making fire and smoke. It just makes sense for this. And how much of this shape you're emitting from and what have you, randomizing it. So now we have a lot of interesting things. So color over lifetime. Sometimes this comes up a lot. So this is like, how do we change the color over lifetime? I found the easiest way to deal with this is like, let's do a start color of white, I think, because this might get a little crazy. But if we start and say, okay, we're going to start off with an orange. Like, you see how we're going to go from an orange to a white. And so maybe with fire, maybe it really goes like orange to like a black. Maybe a dark, dim, like orange or something like that. But anyway, you see how you could really start tweaking it and trying to make it more like a fire and smoke situation. So this is color over lifetime. This is a gradient. In here I set a color in left side to the right side. The beginning and the end. Force over lifetime. So this is like saying how much forces get applied to it. So you can increase the force over the whole of it. Like this is pushing it in that direction. Okay, so it's rotated. Oops. All right. So the Y direction is forcing it that way because it's rotated. I don't know why by default they rotated. Okay, you can just pop it back. And then put this back to 0. So now this thing is emitting that way, but if I change the shape of it, or the angle, that's how like widespread it is. Oh, okay, here's a rotation. Okay, so I can rotate I can have the axis, the local axis of it aligned with global normally, and I just change the shape of it. So now if I increase the Y force, see how much like more it's being pushed up. It's like almost like now it's acting like a gravity, a force. A vertical force is just gravity too. But you can mess around with this. Say like, no, it's I want the wind to be going in the X direction or the Z direction or whatever. Not sure why I can't randomize it. Usually I'll just like randomize, but now it's like blowing in this direction. And you can change, like you can have it go over a curve, like meaning it can change over time. So Y can start at 0, but then like get ramped up, meaning give it over time, it gets more acceleration upward. Velocity over lifetime. It's velocity and force is ultimately like pushing. So size over lifetime. So notice it's a lot of over lifetime or over speed. So here we can say, okay, this is going from a size 0 to a size 1 over its lifetime. But maybe we want like a size 1 down, if you, for whatever reason, if you want to go from 1 to 0. So these curves are just like the animation curves too. That's something to be aware of. And there's preset curves down here. But anyway, if you wanted to like, if it made sense to like ramp up the particles from small to big, so you have size over lifetime. In this case, I don't think it was doing. Maybe I was something like that, from a medium size to a big size, and then rotation over lifetime. These are circular, so I don't really think you're gonna notice. You can see like their outline; they are rotating, but they're circular, so it doesn't really do much. So external forces. Here you go. Here's some noise. We turn off rotation. And I could try to make it more. They're doing this like wobbliness now. So it's almost like the air is maybe pushing them around a little bit. If they're supposed to be colliding with other stuff, which is expensive, you have sub-emitters, you do like sprite sheet animation, or you can even do 3D models too. Trails, I'm not gonna mess around with that, but I was seeing if I get some trails like going behind the particles. And then you can mess with the render part of it, like what material is going on it. Here's the billboard I was talking about. Like, it's just a little 2D shape facing toward the camera. All right, so that's like every part of the particle system that, and you can turn these things on and off as needed and mess around with them. Usually it's with curves or gradients. Let me know if you have any questions on them. And one particle, so you saw like the lava and the dust and stuff. I'm just gonna fire a weapon real quickly because the weapons have a lot of VFX on them. Okay, so there's a quick hotkey. There's actually quite a few VFX here. So the 3D model on the gun, Notice like there's like 4 canisters, 4 cylinders on top, and they kind of pop out as you get low on energy, and then it turns from green to yellow. But notice that there's like a projectile, there's a laser blast going out, and when it hits something, the floor or the wall, there's like these sparks shooting out. So that's VFX. And then you have this like gas. We have like this big green spark coming off the muzzle of the gun. That's going to be more likely VFX. And then you have this like gas kind of just floating up from the gun. Okay, so even just this one weapon has a lot of VFX going on it. So let's just take a quick look at that gun model. All right, probably a prefab, I should say. Also, we'll take a look at a health. We'll take a look at one pickup too. So let's take a look at health pickup, and let's take a look. At the blaster and the projectile from the blaster. Okay. So health pickup. So let's see. We have transform. We have a collider on it, so we know when the user touches it. We have a rigid body. We have a health pickup script. Nav mesh modifier. Okay. What's going on in here? So, look underneath here. VFX health. And this must be the glow. Like when you pick it up, this much play. And so this is the mesh. Okay, this is the actual mesh. This big cross shape. And then this is the VFX that's played when you like just see it sitting out in the world. And then here's the particle system. And so this one is just doing glowy cubes. So there's no, the orange outline is just because I selected. It looks like they're just white cubes. So this is not a 2D. Let's take a look at the render. Yeah, so see it's a mesh instead of billboard. It's an actual mesh, a 3D mesh. And it's just a cube, just the most basic primitive, like a cube. It's cheap. And here's the material that gets applied to it. So health cube. So remember we were in this like universal render pipeline. Basically it's a standard shader. And it looks like it's a little transparent. You can see through it, which is a little bit more expensive to render. And it's fully white, and you notice alpha is just pulled down. It's like 70% opaque, and it's not metallic, it's not shiny, and it's got some emission. It's glowy a little bit. So that's the material, not for the model, for the VFX. And so here we see it. We have a start color. You have a start size, so it starts really, there's a randomness to it from 0.05 to 0.1. So when they start off, they're rather small, but there's a little variation. It looks like they last for like 5 seconds, and they have 0 speed, interestingly. So you can see them kind of, they grow, they like stand still and they like kind of grow, and then they look like they're kind of getting sucked up. Let's see, no gravity. So they're emitting 5 shapes a second. It looks like a half a sphere. They're coming out of a half a sphere shape. And there's the radius, and that's coming off of like the amount of kind of volume space they're allowed to. They get like a random point picked in that whole shape. Not using this. Force over lifetime. So here they got a positive Z. And remember, it was like, it's kind of weird. It's like rotated -90. Whatever. So Z is up for this little local coordinate space. Not sure where, but we are getting a positive. And so let me just try ramping this up a little bit. See if I jump at the 2, they're like flying up there. So there was like 0.1. Is it better practice to use sprites rather than models? It would be better if those cubes were 2D. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get this one doesn't seem to be, there's not like a ton of health pickups all over the place. And this one's not generating, it's only generating 25 particles, so it's like having 25 cubes being rendered to screen at one moment, which is not that hefty if you think about all the geometry that's around this place. If you look at the wireframes on them, like a cube has like 6 sides to it, so like this little section of the floor is like has enough faces for like a cube. And so at any given moment you're looking around and there's like you're seeing this much stuff everywhere. This is like maybe like 100, 200, 300 cubes worth of geometry we need to render just for the level that you're looking at, not the enemy or anything else. So this is like they talk about like a budget, like how much budget do you have to use so that you keep the frame rate. So it's like how much graphical processing can you eat up. And so anyway, this person made the decision that they wanted cubes instead of just like a little like square because it felt more 3D. So if there was like 200 particles or 1,000 particles on the screen at once, I would say just definitely just make your best with sprites mimicking 3D. But I guess with the scaling up of the cube, and it just feels more 3D because it is 3D. Then they wanted to use cubes for this. This was the trade-off: the artistic decision making versus how much processing time. So they decided to do mesh. Usually, it defaults to sprites or billboards, but you can, if it's light geometry, you can get away with it. So they did light geometry. And then it looks like they scale down. So they scale up and they have no momentum going up, and then all of a sudden they slowly get this like momentum going up. That's this force over lifetime. And then they have this size over lifetime. So notice here, this is where they start from 0 and they go to 1 real quickly. And so that's this like growth phase at the bottom, and then they stay at 1, and then they drop right back down. See that? So it'd be interesting if they grow and they're not moving, and then they move and then they shrink. So for me, that'd be like interesting to say, could we do this as a curve too? Could we do the move as a curve? Could we like not move? Right, and then how do I put a keyframe down? Add a key, and then we're gonna move while we're like full size, and hold on, it's like a little hard for me to. Here we're gonna move 2, and then no more force. So let me see. Let me just make sure there's nothing else going on. We have some noise. I don't think that's doing anything. No, that's just making it jittering. So can I go negative? I'm trying to make them stop. So there's a force over lifetime. But I guess if you stop adding a force, they're not going to stop right away. So maybe I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to turn on velocity over lifetime. And then I'm going to curve on the Z. I'm going to say you're not moving. Then all of a sudden you're moving. And I don't want you moving that fast. And I got to get better at these curves because there's a alt key. you can like move one curve handle. And now they're going back. They're like dropping. All of a sudden they get weight and they like drop back down. It's hard to manipulate this curve when it's so small. Alright, we go to 0, velocity, movement, and then we move we go up, and this is our like max that we're moving, and my handles are all jacked up. I want you to be flat. Okay, that's better. And so they're doing this like drop and shrink. That's kind of cool. But I wanted you to just stop moving. So let me add another key and just do a huge drop. Yeah, that kind of gets the point across. So knowing how to like manipulate these curves, and these are called like Bezier handles and stuff, is like a whole skill of itself. All right, I got them to like, let me add another key right here. Let's make it more dramatic. Let's say I don't want you moving at all as you're growing. And then all of a sudden you're allowed to move. And then when you're going to shrink, I want you to just stop. So here it is. We're at 0 speed and we're held for a little bit of time. And then all of a sudden we shoot up to like 0.1, whatever it is, meters per second. And we're stable with that speed. And then all of a sudden we shoot right back down to 0 and we stop. And we stay there. And so you grow big and you move. These two might need to come over here a little bit. All right, there you go. Grow big, then move. I'll just make it very like obvious, so you can see it. Move, stop, and then shrink. So you can really do a lot when you get more comfortable with the controls. So here they're like, give them time to grow, then move them, and stop them, and then let them shrink and disappear. So whatever. Usually some art director or somebody will give you like guidance. Like, I kind of want a VFX to do this or that, and then you have some free reign to like try to figure it out. So anyway, that's curves, adding keys. These are animation curves behind the scene. Any questions on that? So that is the shape. So I wish they had a way to like visualize the shape. Maybe you could slap a texture on it. Oh no, this is putting a text. Oh, interesting. You could put. Oh, that's fascinating. Are they inheriting? Wow, they're inheriting the texture. Like they're sampling like this texture across its UV, and then they're inheriting that color. That's great. Wow, I just stumbled upon something for myself. Gizmo. Ah, awesome. This is the shape. So it's like saying, hey, this is my volume of space, and I want you to randomly pick a point in here. You, meaning the particle, and you're allowed to spawn there. So it's just so this is a hemisphere, and it has a radius, and then it has a radius thickness. If you notice, there's an inner part. So if I just put that down, you're allowed to spawn anywhere in this half a sphere volume of space. But if I change this, notice it's like, no, you only have like this little area here, this little kind of tube shape that you have to pick a spot within. And so normally it's a cone that like you start off with the cone shape. And notice it's just picking a random, and this just, it's not really a cone to me. That's more of like a circle. Let's just. try these tools. Come back. Okay. I think, anyway, this is a sphere. It's like you have the whole sphere where you can generate. There's a hemisphere. The donut shape. Like anywhere in this donut, it's allowed to create itself. So it's like the volume of space that you're allowed to choose your random location from, right? So any other questions? Cool. So I think this health glow must get turned on when you like grab it. Let me just remove this. I can just break this prefab because I'm not going to save it. So this glow, oh, it's just like a glow. Okay. Either when you get close to it or you pick it up, this like glow is actually like a static. It's weird. It's just one big particle. One particle, no time. And it's just a big circle that gives a kind of a hazy, it gives it like a hazy glow. Okay. But you can use VFX to give like atmospheric fog and stuff too. And anyway, this is the mesh. And we've looked kind of at meshes before. This is the wireframe of it. And this is the material. So, let's see. Okay, it's white, but there's this texture map. This albedo map. So it's like some areas are more white, some are more gray. This doesn't look, this bluiness, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't really see bluiness here, but it's like this part is more gray, this part's more white. So here's the white areas, here's the gray areas. And oh wait, that's here. And it looks like there's some normal map. So it looks like there's a lot. It's very smooth, and it's not metallic. It's like a normal, like it's not supposed to be like metallic sheen. It's just supposed to be like a very smooth surface. And there's a normal map on it. And you can see the normal map is impacting the lighting. This is a very flat object. So the normal map is like trying to add more geometric information onto the surface and really is present with these wireframes. But if I pop back and forth, it's really just how it's like spreading the light across these flat edges for whatever reason they want to do that. And maybe it's this emission that's okay, so this is what the object looks like without emission. Kind of grayish. These blues and reds are coming from the environment lighting. But if you turn on the emission, okay, this bright white is coming from the emission map. And this is saying, hey, these areas are like super glowy. These areas are not glowy at all. So like this is that glowy area. Cool. I wasn't going to go into like the scripts at all for it right now, but before I move off the pickup, the health pickup, is there any questions before I go to like the blaster? Okay. So the blaster. This is the weapon model that gets placed somewhere near the character so you can see it on screen. Like the camera's it's something like this or whatever. You can see the wireframe of it. It's got quite a bit of polygons. And if I open it up, we have the aim point. So I guess this is where when you're looking, this is kind of like your eye, where your eye is positioned. The gun muzzle, we need to know where this location is because this is probably where like the projectiles get spawned in the VFX. And the gun root kind of looks like it's placed kind of where the hand is. We have the pistol mesh, weapon primary. These are just position points. Primary weapon. Okay, so this is just the mesh. So here's the mesh filter, the geometry. It looks like it's not the muzzle. We have this material, weapon pistol, another standard surface. So here we have our base color. This has a metallic map, meaning some areas are like meant to look really metallic, some are not. So I'm guessing the gun is mostly metallic. It's just these like glowy glass areas that are not supposed to be like metallic in appearance. Got some normal map, occlusion, self-shadowing, emission. That's the green lighting. Okay. So here we have these pistons. So if I move them up and down, they're separate 3D models. So if I move down in here, first off, this is the geometry for it, and this is the material. But notice we're like probably usually you animate like one group up. It's like an empty group. It's like the parent group. And notice what's super cool is the way that it's rotated. Is that all I gotta say is go local. I'm pulling local Y, and it's doing like figuring out the orientation of it for me. So again, the benefits of local and global space. So they used to have you could switch between the spaces up here, but they don't have that anymore. No. So anyway, if you could switch the handle. Just checking this tool. No, it's meant to do everything all in one. Oh well. But notice that my Y is not like perfectly up and down, and it's aligned with the object's rotation, which in this case is very like if I went back to it, unrotate it, now it's just moving up and down, which is not good. If you rotate an object into place and it inherits this rotation, its local axis is moved, realigned, which is super helpful because now we can just move this up and down in the local Y. We don't have to think about anything else. Notice how it's moving X and Z, the global X and Z. But we don't need to worry about that because we can benefit from local space. All right. And it looks like each cylinder has a little VFX thing. So it looks like this little glowiness. So I guess if I pull the thing out and then look at the VFX. So I guess as it's moving up, you kind of, this is such a small effect. Like I wasn't even seeing the inside chambers of these pistons. But anyway, there is like some VFX going on like within the chambers, within the pistons. And so 1, 2, 3, 4 all the same. They just move up and down and change colors from green to yellow as you're running out of ammo. And here's a front piece. Okay, so the muzzles have two pieces, and then here's the overheat. Okay, so here's the VFX. So as your gun is winding down on ammo, there must be some master script. Yeah, weapon controller up here. It's huge. Weapon fuel cell handler, overheat behavior. Yeah, you'd spend like weeks just on one weapon. But anyway, here's the VFX for, let me turn off all. Alright, so this starts growing as the overheat is happening. And now that I've explained all these things, you can open them up and take a look at how the overheat is working. And it's more about force over lifetime, color over lifetime. Checker pattern means highly transparent. Size over lifetime. A lot of over lifetime is like use so much rotations. And here's the material. And the material is very simple. It's a flat color. It's usually these like little alpha maps, these little like sprites, and it's mostly like like this is just like meant to appear like a whiff of smoke, a whiff of gas. And that's each particle. It's a sprite. It's 2D graphic. Just looks like a whiff of smoke. And the muzzle and the aim point. These positions when you see like an empty transform, these are used like with the code, like for calculating stuff, like where's the muzzle position and stuff when we're generating a projectile. So before I move to the projectile, I'll just pause briefly. If you have any questions on the blaster. Cool. So, and if you ever wanted to pull these into your scene, you know, these are all just under prefabs. All right. So every time you're firing the blaster, besides all these animations and VFX, a projectile is going to get created. So look at that. It's huge. It's a laser blast, and it's meant to move really fast. All right. So this is a projectile prefab. It's got this projectile script on it. And this is the mesh. It's just like this big long shape, and it's like a glowy green. And here's the tip of it. So these things are moving so fast, it has to like figure out, hey, did I just hit a wall, or did I go past a wall, or did I just hit an enemy, or did I just go past an enemy? And if so, you know, I should register damage if it was like an enemy. Or I should destroy myself and spawn like a VFX. But this thing is like, we'll take a look at the script later, but it goes so fast that like every physics frame, it might have already like gone through a wall, and then it has to look backwards and see if it like went through something, and it should destroy itself. Anyway, this is the VFX that gets spawned. Impact VFX. So we have another prefab that gets created when the projectile hits something. It looks like it just plays once. It's just like a shotgun. Like, boom. Restart. So it just plays for like a second. So it looks like this. So they look like squares. Looks like. So it's just meant to play once. So the lifetime is super quick, like 0.18 seconds. Speeds up high. Yeah, they're all moving super quick. They like start at like a small size, and yeah, this is all like default stuff. So there's no, we just like launch one right at the beginning, so there's no rate over time. It's just it's like a one shot. And the shape, I don't know, you can just, I don't know why I did just choose like a small sphere, because like the radius is super small right there. It's just like, here's a small little area of space that this thing can spawn at. Oh, I'm sorry, it must be more. No, 30. It shoots 30 particles instantly. I knew it was like, okay. So we just don't emit over lifetime. Okay, here's where burst is used. Got it. So at time 0, we shoot 30 off in a burst. And we just do it once. So let me try time 0.5. Let me see if I can get to shoot twice. Oh, cool. So let me reset that. So it's a double shot. Alright, so that's the burst in action. And here's an example where a burst works well. So size over lifetime, you can see it just like starts and then it drops down to 0. So they get super small. And nothing else. They just shoot out. Oh, I see why they picked. Okay, they picked the hemisphere to get this like spread. This kind of it's all going up. You see that? There's nothing going down. So they just rotate this thing. If it hits a wall, you just kind of rotate it like this, and it kind of hits like that. Okay. And it's a billboard 2D graphic. It's just got this glowy greenish applied to it. And there's no start color. There's no change of color. All right. Yeah, it's just this emission color. So that was the laser spark, but the weapon itself, I forgot. So it had this like gas boiling out of it, but it was definitely shooting some type of VFX. Oh, muzzle flash. There we go. There's one more VFX. Boy, this thing's got a lot. So now we have a muzzle flash. Yeah, it's like very random each time. That's really cool. So I think so you can see that it's just a one big sprite, and like two or three of them, just like the two of them are rotated randomly against each other and scaled differently, and they last for like a split second. So that's a really cool effect. So let's see. Transparent, and here's what the actual sprite looks like. It's a flare. So highly opaque, and then this fall off. And so let's see what's going on in here. So its duration super fast, 0.1 second, sure. Lifetime of the particles, 0.1 second. Start size, okay, here's the randomness, from 0.3 to 1. So if I did 0.3 to 22, it's going to be low. 2. I think I just turned that on by mistake. So here's like here's a even bigger range from 0.3 to 1. And start rotation could be anywhere, like across the whole 360 of a circle. The two of them. That's why they're randomly rotate against each other. Start color is a super like bright green. And the emission, we just have a burst of 2. I'm gonna try 5 real quick. Yeah, that's kind of cool. You can see why I did 2. Like that look 5. Like adding a few more looks cool too. But yeah, you can see why they did 2. Cool. Emission shape. They just did a circle. So it's just like this little circle of a space. Where'd it go? That to me looks like a little cylinder, but whatever. Maybe it's a circle with a really small radius. And radius thick. Maybe it's just radius, like a thickness makes it like a cylinder. So it's just a little small space that they can generate. So color over lifetime just means go from full color to full opacity to full transparency. So it's just white. So which means that it stays this green color, because the white means it's not blending, it's not overlaying anything. You could have just did green and then it doesn't matter, but they're really just showing that the transparency falls off. Which I don't even think. I think this whole thing happens so fast that I don't even think you need to ramp down the alpha. Yeah, I can see how it okay. Yeah, it does look a little bit better. That's fine. They made a good choice. And I'm just gonna quickly. I want to rotate this thing over lifetime. I just want to see if it doesn't. I think it's gonna move so fast. They're not gonna. Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, that doesn't make sense for this. Okay. And I went over the render. Awesome. So muzzle blast. Yeah, let's see. That's everything. So I'm going to delete these all. And I'm going to go back. And now that you saw these 4 different prefabs for the laser pistol, now you can kind of see them all in action. So you see the overheat. You see the muzzle blast. You see the prefab the laser streak flying out and hitting the wall and making its own kind of impact VFX. The only thing I think is pointless is the VFX in each one of those pistons. I never see them. Don't see them at all. So it's just a waste of graphics processing. Doesn't add to the immersion. But everything else is really well done with it. Let's see if I can find a health pickup. Where's the health pickup? There it is. So he's rotating around, and here's those little white. Oh, you see how quickly they're. Oh, the crosses. That's interesting. Hold on, let me do that again. Because I noticed now that the cubes are rotating. So that's why it's a 3D VFX. Because that really sells at the 3D. So if you look at this thing, you can see that the cubes are kind of, all the little cubes are rotating about themselves. It's almost giving them like a flutter. Or is that, yeah, no, they are rotating. Get out of here. Ah, that's interesting. So you saw when he blows up, you saw those little sparkles, like explosion sparkles. But anyway, these things, it's moving. It's kind of slowly. The main cross is kind of slowly bobbing up and down while it's rotating, and then the little squares you can notice as they start pulling up, they're like spinning about their axis too. And I bet you there's a little noise, like a little wobble, and they shrink up. So there's quite a bit going on. You usually it's very subtle. You overlay like 2, 3, 4 very subtle effects on top of each other, and you get like a really good looking effect in you. Usually subtlety is the key. And so if I grab one, all these crosses go, all these health crosses kind of bloomed at the bottom. That must mean it probably spawns. Probably something in the script. Yeah, another VFX. Health pickup. It's like they went really heavy on the VFXs. What the hell's going on? I can't frame up on this thing. Maybe this time destructed. Let me pull it out. Maybe pull it, something not be in play. Yeah, it had like a destruct thing on it. I couldn't get to it. Here we go. Oh, here we go. It's stuck over. Okay. And so this one, it must be doing burst stuff again. Yeah, burst 25 of them out. They scale up really quickly, then they float outward randomly, and they're like a little sprite thing too, this little plus sign. And so they have this force over lifetime, push them out in Y. And this one appears to be angled up, so Y really does mean up. Size, pop big, stay big, pop small. And there's a little bit of a bounciness. Boom, 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 boom. That's, you can see it in the, it kind of does it. And render. And okay, start speed from slow to fast. Lifetime, they have a random spacing that they destroy themselves over. Yeah, I see that. Randomized start size, which doesn't really matter that much because their size gets taken over pretty quickly. And the force, just Y up. Okay, so they're getting start speed. I guess maybe the speed doesn't. Yeah, that's the speed, but not the direction of the speed. So they have a certain amount of speed, but maybe there's like a random. Oh, maybe the way. Okay, so this is where the shape comes in. So the shape offers. Okay, this is more like a cone. All right, I can agree with that. So besides like the starting position, too, the shape can also a particle gets a randomized position within that like volume of space of whatever this start shape is, but it also looks at the normal. So the orientation of the surface, like for example, this bottom part of the surface pointing up, but this one's kind of, these sides have like an angle to them. They're like going this way, and like that'll be like the starting direction that the thing starts moving. So the speed is just how quickly something is going. It's not the direction that it's going. So the starting direction will be taken from like the surface normal, like what part of this surface is being generated from. What's its normal? It's pointing at. So you see that these things are all kind of angled 45 degrees in certain ways, and you can see that in the flight of the particle. Cool. So I am thoroughly done with VFX at this point. So that was good. That was a nice focus class lecture. Let me know if you have any questions or topics of interest for Friday. And if anyone's getting to the point where they're like trying to figure out modding something, let me know, because that's always interesting to focus on certain attributes, certain gameplay, or certain level design, or anything that you're like trying to learn and mess around with. You could let me know about it. Otherwise, we have lecture on Friday and Tuesday, and then the following Friday is a quiz.